Because I don't remember having telepathic communication before, so it's very interesting how normal it felt. I literally heard from above my head this very loud and clear voice say, "That's an interesting theory, but you're wrong, and here's why."
You were not on drugs.
No.
You were not drunk.
Not only my mind calmed down, but there was a different opening and feeling in my body, which I now know as channeled energy. I said, "What are you?" And they said, "We are your guides."
Lee Harris is a renowned psychic channeler.
Over 1 million people a month seek his spiritual advice on health, relationships,
and finance.
Everyone is in relationship with other dimensions. We all have access to spirit and to our higher self or our soul.
Do the Z's have any information about the Epstein drama?
There is truth in it, and it is being used to divert your attention away from other things. They've talked about planetary control, and that's a current goal and aim for a very small shadow group on the planet. And that is something that's been playing out, they say, for a very long time, but it's rising to the surface to be publicly seen now. And the question is, how bad does it have to get before it gets better? Do you want me to tell you something about yourself?
Uh-oh. Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown.
We're here to ask, why am I here?
We're here to ask, what are the abilities that I have been given that allow me to change the world?
Big questions today, and this is a topic that we were worried about tackling, would you say?
Very worried, very skeptical, very concerned about what we would be sharing with this audience.
Tell us more.
Well, we're speaking to someone who was on a sort of spiritual journey in his 20s and received information from a voice that was not his. And his first thought was, am I schizophrenic? And his second thought was, I don't think so. What is happening? And he is someone who is very grounded, very intelligent, very interested in trying to understand the skills and abilities that he believes he was given. He is an intuitive. He is he's someone who channels. He channels information and has a large and devoted following of people who seek advice about relationships and finance and work. And he's a musician. His name is Lee Harris. And his latest book, The Future Human, New Ways of Living and Being on Earth, is available. It's kind of an unbelievable story. And I don't really want to say a lot more. I think if you've ever experienced something that felt like it was coming from outside of you, you'll want to hear someone describe very specifically what it feels like in his body, what it sounds like in his head, and why he thinks he was placed here with this information.
Just before we get into this episode, I want to take 30 seconds. If you aren't already subscribed to the podcast, please do us a favor, subscribe anywhere you're listening right now or on YouTube. Click the little bell notification to get notified of new episodes. It really does help us out so much. And our pledge to you is we are going to do our best to have the most interesting guests, cover the widest range of topics that mean the most to you. We cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for being here with us on this journey.
And with that, we're going to welcome in person Lee Harris. He leads a vibrant online community. He reaches 1 million people every month. The Portal is his online events and members community. And he's also an accomplished music producer and singer-songwriter. Also, you can learn more about Lee Harris at leeharrisenergy.com. Very excited to welcome Lee Harris to The Breakdown in person. Break it down. Lee Harris, welcome to The Breakdown.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you have a question for us to get started.
Yes, it was, why am I here?
Like on Earth?
Well, no, that question I'm working on myself. I was very pleased to get the invite, but I was like, oh, that's curious.
I'm curious why that was curious. And this is not a trick question.
Because we are such distinguished intellectuals in the scientific realm that he might think, why do we want to talk about some of this?
Was that the reason? Like what struck you?
I'll tell you. So I think I saw several episodes of your show about 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought it was great. But I think maybe at the time, I didn't think I would be the kind of guest you would have on.
You could be right.
Right.
Meaning from years ago.
Yeah. It was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe, when I first saw it. So I was familiar with the podcast, and then you are an imprint from my childhood because of Beaches.
Oh.
So, and I always have said this about your performance in Beaches is one of those rare child actor performances where they got it right.
Oh, that's really
where
sweet.
the kid didn't just look like the person they had cast, but also had the energy. Like, you believed that you and Bette Midler were the same person, which is super rare. So I watched Beaches so many times in my teenage years. So it was kind of trippy to go, oh, okay, I'm going to have to...
I'm not saying that the answer is we search out people who loved Beaches to bring them on the
that
podcast.
forum.
In this very chair, quite recently, Johan Hari, who is not from necessarily the exact place you're from, but has a British accent.
Right.
He also was a huge Beaches fan, and we talked about it. And I actually just wrote a piece for Substack about Beaches and about that experience and how it came about. So that's just very funny and interesting. I think that the fact that you weren't sure why you're here is, I think, a bit of a testament to what we see as kind of the evolution of this podcast.
Right.
Which is that, we started as sort of democratizing mental health.
The more experts we spoke to, the more common it was that the notion that people should and it would benefit them to have a connection to something greater than themselves was a profoundly reoccurring theme, topic, and set of advice. And how to do that, all roads lead to Rome, right? There are endless ways to do that. And we've looked at the scientific, we've looked at the mystical, we looked at the science overlapping the mystical. And what's interesting about this world, which is a little bit more where I come from, is that I was always a very skeptical seeker. I come from a very rational, practical, logical background. It makes more sense when someone can explain the mechanisms than when they can't. And the more I explored spirituality, alternative medicine, alternative healing, the more out there it can get, and the more discerning one has to be, because there can be things that are seemingly mind-opening and expanding that seem absolutely crazy, that have validity. It can seem out there, but you can also start to explain the tradition and the mythology and why it makes sense. And then there's other people who are like, I'm going to wave crystals over you, and I'm going to, the list goes on about how it can be weirder and stranger. So to tie it back to you and why you're here, I think it's important to have conversations with people from all different walks of the energetic and consciousness world. We have doctors, we have people who are studying this in labs, and people who speak about their experience outside of labs. And then we also have a variety of others. And I think you may fall into the other category.
For me, I was raised with a concept of God that I have kept. It was big enough to hold all of my questions and all those things. So I have, a concept of God, and I took on a lot of observance, a lot of ritual in college. And I lived a very traditional, religious, kind of existence. And also I'm trained as a scientist. I don't find any conflict between those. So for me, I'm very interested when I start hearing the same words in different languages. That's when I get interested in what's that oneness and what's what is something universal that we can kind of learn. So, we've had Teresa Caputo here, right? Oh, yeah. And then we've had theoretical physicists here. And, I'm always interested in listening for this similarity to try and find, if there is something out there, right, which I believe there is, it's going to speak to people in different ways. It's going to speak to different cultures in different ways. It's going to speak to different individuals. And what you can offer us is a very personal experience of contact that I think a lot of people, on one hand, might dismiss, and we'll talk about that. And you deal with it head on, and I appreciate that as well. And we have other people who may not be able to explain it, but believe it. And then we have people who don't need to explain it because they believe it, right?
We also have people who, if it's not explained in a lab, don't want to know about it.
Of course, yeah. That's the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's most of the world, yeah. I'll be honest, there's many aspects to this conversation that I'm not exactly sure how to approach.
Right.
But I think we're just going to, kind of dive right in. We will also do an intro, just so you know, before, once you're gone, we'll read your bio and, we'll do that. So we'll cover all that stuff too.
Or where do you want to start? But I was thinking...
I know exactly where I want to start.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm excited. Okay. You have a personal connection to something greater than all of us that you didn't always have contact with.
No.
I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about who you were before a very specific, literally life-shattering, life-changing revelation came to you, I believe, when you were on a subway.
Yes. And that happened when I was 23, so 26 years ago now. So who I was at that age, I was someone who was recovering from dealing with the impact of a childhood where I knew that people weren't telling the truth about what they were feeling. So you could say empathy, sensitivity, but of course I didn't have a cognitive awareness of that. So of course it's easy to look back now and say that. But at the time I was dealing with my experience of the world not quite making sense. I was also dealing with sexuality because I knew I was gay from a young age, and I was told by the world that was going to be a huge problem, and that I wouldn't find love, I wouldn't be able to experience what all my peers and friends and loved ones experienced. So there were those two aspects moving through me, and I'd come out of a period of bulimia after losing 60 pounds at the age of 16.
Wow.
So I'd had this very interesting kind of journey with identity. I knew what it was to wear a body that people treated you a certain way for. And then when I lost all the weight, I noticed that the way everyone treated me changed. And rather than that being a good thing and just like, well, hey, I managed to achieve the goal of what I wanted, which was to not be carrying all the extra weight, what really struck me was the very same people who would have scowled at me or scorned me now appreciate. So there was this very dysmorphic sense of, whoa, what is the world and how do people relate to each other? But I hadn't worked anything out. I was really just trying to recover. So I got very into self-growth and spirituality and metaphysics at the age of 16. And a friend took me to a tarot reading. And at that tarot reading, everything made sense. And it wasn't just the information she was giving me that was very interesting and was very unusually accurate about my past and what I'd experienced so far. The past I could verify. The future you can't verify. But the past, I was like, oh, how is this appearing?
Or can you?
Well, yes, you can. You can, actually. But I couldn't verify it at the time because it was all new to me. But something in that room felt true. So I read a lot. I studied a lot. There was a book by Shirley MacLaine that was pivotal for me called Out on a Limb. But the one area of that book, and it was a huge book, lots of people read it, was she visited a channeler. And that was something I wasn't interested in. It wasn't something I thought, I loved tarot readers and intuitives, but to me, channeler was just a bit beyond. And a friend took me to see one. And I remember coming out of that with this guy and saying to her as we drove home in the car, well, he's really intuitive because he knew things about me he shouldn't have known. And the things he was telling me about my future were really interesting. But why did he have to close his eyes and put on a funny voice? He's clearly intuitive. Why the performance? I didn't need that. I'm a believer. I don't need a performance. Because he didn't seem like someone who would fake something. But channeling to me was weird. And it was not necessary. I was into self-growth. I was into intuition. Channeling was a step beyond. And then it happened to me.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Mudwater.
We love Mudwater here at Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. I especially love the matcha mushroom blend. I love the taste, and it really helps with morning brain fog. Jonathan loves their hot cacao for a calming nighttime ritual. Their OG blend is a mix of cacao, chai, turmeric, and adaptogenic mushrooms to help you feel focused without the crash. Just mix it with cold water or milk, shake it up, pour it over ice, and boom, you've got yourself a refreshing feel-good boost that actually helps you stay balanced. Every single ingredient in Mudwater's products are 100% USDA certified organic, non-GMO, gluten-free, vegan, and kosher with no sugar and no sweeteners added. Mudwater provides sustained energy without the spikes and crash of traditional coffee, but there's also caffeine-free blends available. Their matcha, turmeric, and rest starter kits are a must-try. Mudwater is available at Target and Sprouts locations across the U.S. It's never been easier to grab a cup of this friendly pick-me-up. Ready to make the switch to cleaner energy? Head to mudwater.com. Grab your starter kit today. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive deal, up to 43% off your entire order, plus free shipping and a free rechargeable frother when you use the code BREAK. That's right, up to 43% off with code BREAK at mudwtr.com. After your purchase, they'll ask how you found them. Please show your support. Let them know we sent you.
Keep your energy natural and refreshing all year long with Mudwater, because life is too short for anything less than clean, delicious energy. Mind Alex Breakdown is supported by Blissy.
I really didn't know that traditional, like cotton pillowcases, can cause hair damage or skin breakouts, but I can now rest easy, literally, with Blissy. Their pillowcases and hair accessories are better than satin, which is actually made from synthetics, which can be rough on your hair and skin. Blissy's pillowcases were voted Best Gift of the Year 2024. You'll have healthier skin and hair in weeks, reduce fine lines and wrinkles, and eliminate frizz. Also, really good for protecting color-treated hair and preserving that incredible hairstyle that you managed to nail this morning. Blissy is dermatologist tested and recommended. It's clinically proven to not clog pores, unlike cotton, and has naturally hydrating silk fibers, keeping skin moisturized all night. They're also antibacterial and hypoallergenic, easy to care for. They're machine washable, and they have over 70 colors, including a new Wicked and Harry Potter line. I haven't posted a messy bedhead selfie in a while. With Blissy, it would be hard because my hair is so smooth and beautiful because of their pillowcases. No more sweaty nights, better sleep. Because you're a listener, Blissy is offering 60 nights risk-free plus an additional 30% off when you shop at blissy.com/breakpod. That's BLISSY.com/breakpod. Use code BREAKPOD to get an additional 30% off.
Your skin and hair will thank you. Mind Alex Breakdown is supported by Calm.
If your sleep schedule's been all over the place recently, you are not alone. The shift into fall routines can be the perfect time to reset your night, starting with Calm. Calm helps me with the big three: anxiety, stress, and sleep problems. Their meditations help untangle the day's chaos in our brains. And did you know breath has a direct link to your anxiety? I feel more at ease and in my body after their easy and helpful breathing exercises. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. They have a wide range of content and programs to help you navigate life's ups and downs, guided meditations to help you work through anxiety and stress, boost your focus, build healthier habits, and take better care of your physical well-beings. There's also sleep stories, sleep meditations, and calming music, grounding exercises, expert-led talks. The Calm app puts the tools you need right in your pocket, so stress and anxiety relief is always within reach. Calm has over 2 million 5-star reviews and can help you stress less, sleep more, and live better.
Calm has an exclusive offer just for our listeners of our show. Get 40% off Calm premium subscription at calm.com/break. This is an amazing value. Go to
calm.com/break for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm.com/break, and tell Calm you heard about them from us. Before we get into what happened to you, where would you say your sort of faith was? Meaning, did you believe in God? Did you believe in, any sort of that?
I must have believed in God because at the age of 10, I was praying to God to take away the fact I was gay. And I did that for years, hoping that there would be some divine intervention. Of course, not realizing, you can actually be a happy gay person.
Right.
You're just living at a time where it's still new. And, and there's going to be some work to do to uncover and recover yourself.
But did you decide that God must not exist because I'm still gay? Or did you,
No.
Now in retrospect, obviously God loved you exactly the way that you are.
Right. Yeah. I didn't grow up in a religious household. It was very loose. We went to church a few times over the years, but it was more like, it's Christmas or, so no, I didn't grow up with religion. But I did believe in spirit, and I had direct experiences with spirit that were quite undeniable to me. I was buying all the books, I was going to workshops, I was checking out shamanism, I was exploring because I was like, there is something about this world that makes our world make way more sense to me, because our world feels like watching an old black and white movie that isn't very good. And you add spirit to our world, and suddenly the color is back. Things are 3D. Sensory abilities are celebrated in this world. And I think what I didn't know was I was a shut down but highly sensory person.
Before we get to the moment that Lee, as we knew him, became a different Lee, I'm going to ask you a hard question because we're just getting to know each other, but I think it's important because it's something that also comes up a lot. You can be as specific or as vague as you would like. Many people who are in touch with different levels of consciousness, either theirs or other people's, have experienced trauma, either capital T or lowercase t, depends on a definition. But there seems to be, what we keep hearing is this thread of, if you've had to leave your body, if you've had to be in touch with something to escape this reality, does it make you more attuned to being able to step outside of your body or experience other realities? Would you say you fell into this classification?
I think so. When you put it that way, and I look at my upbringing, I was always somewhat on the outside, even though I could connect. And I had good relationships, and I came from a family that there was love. So it wasn't family that was my issue. It was more dealing with the world at large.
Okay. So take us to the day that your world changed.
Yeah. So I was working in fundraising at the time, and I was on my way to the office. I was trying to break into the music industry unsuccessfully at the time. And so I was going through in my head all of my own negative thoughts, like what I called my self-attack or self-judge. And they were very present. And I knew that voice so well. Like, the voice didn't scare me. It was just, how loud is it going to get today? And how much is that going to depress me? And I was in a relationship at the time, and I was asking a question about him. And I was just kind of in my head kind of going, oh yeah, I'm sure that's definitely his fault. And why is he? And I very clearly, from above my head, and this is still where I hear them if I speak to them directly, which is different to if I'm channeling them for other people. I hear them from here, and I literally heard this very loud and clear voice say, that's an interesting theory, but you're wrong. And here's why.
Were you on drugs?
No.
Were you drunk?
It was the morning. No, it was like,
Please,
it was like
never
8:30.
stop me before, Lee.
No. Well, okay. No, I wasn't.
So you were not on drugs.
No.
You were not drunk.
No, and I was on one of the most disconnected places on earth, which is the subway. That's the thing. When I look back at it, I'm like, shouldn't this have happened in some spiritual retreat or monastery? No, it happened in the place where everyone is shut down, everyone is avoiding each other. But that was something I was familiar with. In a way, I was familiar with a level of that being the truth of life.
So
the voice said, you're wrong, and here's why. And it gave me this answer that was shockingly true, because as soon as I heard it, I went, oh. It was like a wise friend giving you the piece of information. But two things happened. If my body and my energy field, because of my self-attack, before I heard the voice, kind of looked a bit like, kind of like this. During the however many sentences it was where they explained why this was my issue, what the issue was, and why it was bothering me, not only my mind calmed down, but my body just kind of opened. And I felt myself, it felt different. There was a different opening and feeling in my body, which I now know as channeled energy. But at the time, that was the thing. It wasn't just words. It was a liberation energetically. And so very quickly, I thought to myself, what is this? And I said, what are you? And they said, we are your guides.
were you talking out loud? You're talking in your head.
No, not.
Well, I mean, if you're hearing voices, you might as well talk out loud to them.
It's a really good point, because I don't remember having telepathic communication before. So it's very interesting how normal it felt. People often say to me, were you scared? And I'm like, no. The only time I got scared was when I realized I might have to explain this to other people. I was completely comfortable with it because it felt so loving, so comfortable. Loving in a clear way. It wasn't pandering to me, because I asked loads of questions over those first few weeks and months, and it never pandered. It would always tell me if I was wrong and why, but not in a judgy way. But the kind of the thing that hit me when I asked, are you my guides? I said, do you have a name? And they said, well, we don't have names, but we know humans need names. So you can call me Zachary, and I'm the lead spokesperson for the guides. And at this time, I had never heard of a group. All I'd heard about was, I'd heard of a few channelers, and they channeled an entity or a being. So spirit guides to me was very acceptable. It wasn't like they said we're aliens from the 20th dimension, which I'd have been like, I would have been scared of that. But because I understood they were my guides, I started this relationship with them that I would go home and I would write a question, then I would write what I would hear, like a telephonist or a receptionist.
Okay. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. But I'm going to ask like an obvious question.
Sure.
And I want a real answer
Sure.
to it, right? So sometimes I'll think things
Yeah.
and I will hear the thoughts in my head,
Yes.
right? That's not what you're talking about. Okay, so this is what I'm interested in. When we talk to people, let's say, who've had near-death experiences, and they go away,
Mm-hmm.
and then they come back,
Mm-hmm.
they overwhelmingly come back with what can only be described as a download, meaning the time that they're gone is not enough time for them to learn the things that they learned that they didn't know before.
Right.
So Elizabeth Crone, a person who was struck by lightning, had a near-death experience. We've had her on the podcast. She received information within a few minutes that she was out that fills volumes
Mm-hmm.
of pages. Things about quantum time, like the nature of our existence, like the amount of information is like a download. So when you are talking about this, I might think, well, gosh, Lee, you just didn't realize that this problem you had, it was you. And you finally heard yourself speaking rationally to yourself. How can we know, meaning how could you know that this information was not literally generated by yourself, but was coming from elsewhere? Meaning you can believe it, which you do, but I want to know what it feels like to know that for you.
I'm going to answer you now, age 49, which is, I know there is no elsewhere there. So now I just know there is no elsewhere.
Yep.
There are different levels of focus. We can focus in different levels of dimension, different levels of reality. It's all about where our focus goes. I also do not believe that what happened to me is, I guess it seems unusual, but
Just a little bit.
I know. But what I teach people is we all have access to spirit, and we all have access to our higher self or our soul, and a wisdom voice or a wisdom point that might be the same one we draw from for friends in our life, but for ourselves, we just never access it. We don't get out of the way. I've always said, if I died and they said, by the way, the guides was a cover story for God, I'm like, cool. I actually don't care about the position of where the information is coming from. But what was undeniable to me was it changed my life. It changed my perspective. It didn't make everything perfect immediately, because like all of us, I'm a human learning my lessons. But it forever changed what I believed about this reality. And it started to include this other dimension. So
What were you wrong about in the relationship that was not the other person's fault?
I thought it was something to do, I'm trying to go back to the story now, but I think it was something to do with, I just thought he was behaving badly and wrong. And then I was shown, no, you haven't communicated clearly. You have triggered him. Something I didn't even know, like something about his past that I had triggered, that when I actually spoke to him about it, he was like, how did you know that? So this was, for me, if you're talking about evidence, there were things that they would tell me in those first few months about people that I knew, or things, aspects of the world, aspects of the planet that I couldn't prove. But then when I would watch them play out with the people, I'd be like, oh, wow, they were absolutely right. They would be, no, don't talk to your sister, but she is very in grief right now. And in a couple of weeks, you're going to find out why, but it's not appropriate for you to talk to her. It'll be too much for her. 2 weeks later, she would, and I'd be like, oh. So there was this strange reality with time that I started to find myself on a travelator, that I sometimes had access to future information. But again, it was very much if I asked. And the one thing that did go through my head very quickly was, is this schizophrenia? Which
yes.
26 years ago was the name we would have known for this phenomena.
Meaning hearing voice. I mean, there's
Yeah.
other features of schizophrenia, but when you talk about what would be deemed auditory hallucinations,
Yes.
that's the first thing you would think. That's
Yes.
schizophrenia.
And my reaction to that question to myself was, well, I got a really useful one, so I'm gonna keep quiet because this one is not blowing up the party. This one, no, I was like, I'll just keep quiet. But I stayed open to that, and still to this day, I can't, And it's funny when people go, "How can you prove it?" I'm like, I'm not here to prove it. I'm here living. There are people that what I have done through me have been helped by it. And I think probably my biggest job in the work I do is to be an ambassador for this, for other people's experiences. I've had so many people come up to me privately because of my public channeling, and they're like CEOs of huge businesses, and they come up at the party and they go, I wouldn't tell anyone else this, but I've been running my business through channeling for the last 5 years. So people confess and confide their experiences to me.
It's actually shocking how many executives lean into extrasensory abilities and consulting with people who have information outside of
True.
direct metrics.
True.
Now, often they want to validate that with actual metrics, but there are so many people that you will start to meet in extremely high-performing businesses that are in multi-billion-dollar companies, and you're like, you're into what? You're open to this? And like, there's a split, obviously. There are some people who like won't go near that at all.
Of course.
But the number of people in that world who are open to it is actually quite shocking. If you think about what you just described, just in that relationship, that you all of a sudden have a different perspective of a problem. That is divine intervention, right? Like I forget what episode we were talking about this, but I was writing on Substack and I sort of posed the question, like, do people believe in divine intervention? Oh, it was about the lightning strike. Not that long ago, we were recording something and my asked a question about God.
It was the first time I asked about God in this podcast.
And as she asked the question, lightning struck the
building.
The building that the guest was in remotely and knocked the internet down.
Perfect.
Now, was it coincidental? I think someone did the math, and the odds of that happening at that exact moment were like astronomically.
Well, but I said what's interesting is what's the meaning you make of it, right? God's either approving or disapproving, depending on which side of the conversation you want to be on.
And so I posed the question online, do people believe in divine intervention? And, a lot of what is described as awakening or described as divine intervention is seeing our problems from a different perspective, however that may be. And so anyone who is approaching a problem, how do we pull back, have more objectivity, more insight, whether that be information about the future, whether that be getting out of our own way. And so I think both of those definitions are true regardless of where the information came from.
I want to get back to the extreme specificity. And I don't know why this makes me laugh so much. The Zachary of it.
I get it.
Did you know anyone named Zachary?
No, I didn't.
You didn't know any Zachary?
No.
Zachary Levi, he's an actor.
Yeah, but he wasn't an actor. He wasn't
Right, we
around
were younger
then.
then. You and I are the same age.
This is 1999?
Yeah.
26 years ago.
Okay.
This is 1999.
So, like, biblical Zachary? Like Zachariah? No?
Well, funnily enough, Zechariah, that's interesting. So that's biblical. Okay. So there were two others that I learned the names of during the process, and it was Zachariah and Ziadora.
Uh-huh.
And I thought,
can't. It's so
I
specifically.
thought I'd heard of Pia Zadora, and I knew she was like a huge American star, and I was like, oh, Zadora. So yeah, that's what I was given.
Does anyone want to know who Zachariah was?
Who was Zachariah?
Have you looked this up?
Zachariah with a PH.
But like Zachary is what
Oh
I'm
yeah,
thinking
right.
of.
So Zachariah.
Yes.
Okay. Yes,
I mean,
please.
it's the closest biblically. The father of John the Baptist. And he was he was a priest. He was a high priest.
Okay.
And that means he was a Levi, which is why Zachary Levi was probably named Zachary, because their last name was Levi. And Zechariah, biblically, was of the tribe of Aaron, which was the Levi tribe. He was told, kind of an Abraham-Sarah story, Zechariah was told that he would father a child very late in life. The angel Gabriel came to him, Gavriel, he didn't believe the angel and was struck mute.
Wow.
And only when the child was born, John the Baptist,
Right.
did he speak again.
Wow.
Very interesting. That's just the first thing I thought of in terms of
Interesting.
like the cultural vernacular of why Zachary might, exist in the ether.
Very cool.
Anyway, just a very interesting. And the number 88 also has very interesting.
It does.
I don't really talk a lot about like Bible code or numerology. And I know that certain people do, and I've been told what my manifesting number is and all these things. But in Hebrew, which is, for me, the language of creation,
Yeah.
right? In Hebrew, every letter is a number,
Right.
which means that every word also has a numerical significance.
Right.
So, for example, my name Maim means water, and the number that the Hebrew letters line up for is 40. So I think of 40 as kind of my number, and there's 40 years in the desert, and there's 40 days on, that Moses was on the mountain. Anyway, everybody's name and every word has a number. So 88 is an interesting one. 8 is, as Matisyahu says, it's the number of infinity because it's one more than you know how to be, is how Matisyahu says it. Meaning the week is 7 days. 8 is one more. It's what you can't imagine. So the double emphasis, right, for 88.
Interesting.
It's like so beyond.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are
Yeah.
just the things that I kind of I don't know, that's how my brain works when I think about your
The
experience.
piano is my favorite instrument, and 88 keys. And
That's
I didn't
right.
know that till years later. So I was like, that's interesting.
Ooh, so
Yeah.
interesting.
Just before we continue, do you believe everyone has access to guides?
I do.
So
I actually-
everyone on Earth has
Well,
like
put
a
it this way.
handful of
No,
guides?
let me put it this way. I believe everyone is in relationship with other dimensions, whether or not they choose to make it conscious. One thing I do know, and I think this is at the root of so many of our issues, we are all supposed to be here differently. We're all supposed to make up a jigsaw together. We're all supposed to have slightly different slants, slightly different talents, slightly different abilities, slightly different flaws. That's kind of how we're composed. So I don't think it's for everybody to have a spiritual path, but I always say I would rather be trapped in an elevator with someone who is kind and open-hearted than someone who is spiritually learned and hasn't developed kindness and an open heart. Because to me, the kind and open-hearted person is living with spirit. There are many people I've met who are spiritually learned, who are all about the data, and sometimes can behave very abusively under the guise of spirituality. So for me, it's not so much about what you believe, it's about how you behave. And I think that spirituality has, I know for me and many others, helped many of us become more aligned with who we're truly here to be and shed some of the human stuff that we're carrying.
A lot of the people that you're talking about who are not acting overly kind, they have a great grasp of the language.
Yes,
It's-
or they have a hunger for power and they see that as being a source of getting it. And I think there are many, I've met many over the years. I've been in very close quarters with one of them. And so they're all a little different. But either way, it's sad for everybody. It's sad for the guru and it's sad for the followers if it's not coming from a place of benevolence or love or goodwill.
Mayim Bialik's breakdown is supported by AG1.
Jonathan and I have got our morning routine down for the past 4 years now. With a simple scoop of AG1 supports our energy needs, skin health from within, digestive regularity, food cravings, immune support, even a healthy mood. And now we'd like to introduce you to something that has optimized our nighttime routine by helping with sleep. AGZ is a nighttime drink with clinically studied key ingredients, including adaptogens, herbs, and minerals. AGZ is a melatonin-free formula that supports the body's natural sleep cycle. It's notoriously difficult to wind down before bed, especially if we've been podcasting in the afternoon. It's so exciting. AGZ not only helps us with that, leaves us feeling more rested when we wake up, helping us make the most out of our days. You just mix it with warm water and the chocolate flavor is delicious. Start taking your sleep seriously with AGZ. Head to drinkag1.com/breakdown to get a free welcome kit with the flavor of your choice that includes a 30-day supply of AGZ and a free frother.
That's drinkag1.com/breakdown to get started. My MBLX Breakdown is supported by Thrive Cosmetics.
I tend to keep my makeup looks relatively simple during summer. I focus on looking refreshed without going full glam. Maybe a little cream or tinted lotion, some mascara, a little blush, nothing too wild or out there. Summer is about looking and feeling your best without piling it on. Thrive Cosmetics is your go-to for a simple, clean, and radiant summer look. Minimal effort, maximum impact. Every product is 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients that work with your skin, not against it. We love that Thrive Cosmetics gives back to a ton of causes that are important to so many of us, like cancer, domestic abuse, homelessness and poverty, and racial and social justice. For every product purchased, they donate products and funds to help communities thrive. I love their Liquid Lash Extensions mascara. People always say, what is on your lashes? Well, that's what it is. It's a vegan tubing mascara with over 40,000 five-star reviews. It's easy to remove. That's my favorite part. Slides right off with warm water. Maximize your look with minimal effort. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/MBB for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/MBB.
My MBLX Breakdown is supported by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack sponsor.
IQ Bar is the better-for-you plant protein-based snacks made with brain-boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without the sugar crash. Their plant protein bars are packed with high-quality ingredients to help you keep physically and mentally fit. IQ Bar is totally free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners for a natural anytime snack. Try any of their 9 delicious flavors. More people than ever are starting their days on the right foot with IQ Bar's brain and body-boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees.
I cannot say enough about IQ bars. I literally, right before we recorded this, I had an IQ bar. I keep them at the studio and I have them almost every day.
Right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text BREAKDOWN to 64,000. Text BREAKDOWN to 64,000. That's BREAKDOWN to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details.
And when you describe the physical difference when you got out of your own way or you had that change in perspective where you said you felt calmer, more relaxed, you had previously been stewing about the relationship, about what was going wrong, had some resentment potentially towards the person you were with, all of a sudden that level of somatic calming as a result of that shift is also a hallmark sign of a higher vibrational consciousness, for lack of a better word.
For me, it was a double whammy. So someone could have told me something that my mind could have understood, and that is moderately helpful. I'm a sensory person, so for me, it's more about experience. It's not that I don't like data or facts or certain things. I do in certain areas of life, but actually that was the tell. I think if I hadn't been in such self-judgment at the time, the blinding light of it wouldn't have been so contrasted. That I didn't, like you said, the day that my life changed, I didn't know my life changed that day. I didn't know I would end up doing this for work 5 years later. But my life did change that day, or it reconnected, it kind of plugged back in.
I think it's pretty specific. If you've never heard voices and then all of a sudden you do.
I guess so, but you have to remember I was 7 years into
Right.
a reconnection to, the world is not just what all these humans
Right.
are telling us. There were lots of humans who were talking about spirit, whether it was cultures who hadn't lost that connection, or whether it was individuals I met along the way, healers, the people leading workshops I went to. There was a faith or a connection to spirit that I also experienced as true and beneficial.
Well, and I think also, again, I'm looking for the similarities here. When people talk about like precognitive dreams, let's say, or when people come back from near-death experiences or some kind of trauma with extrasensory abilities, right? Things that we cannot explain, right? In many cases, what they describe is that it's indescribable in the language of this world.
So true.
So when you talk about, receiving this kind of like, and I don't know what example will resonate with people most, but let's say you think you're in love and you have all these relationships, and then one day you meet a person for whom that connection is different, and you realize that all the other times when you thought you were in love that was a different set of emotions that are valuable and interesting, but this is not that. If you've ever meditated and you're like, oh, it's quiet and the thoughts, they're like washing over me like pebbles in a river, right? But then you drop into a place that's like, where am I? When is it? And did I eat mushrooms by accident? Then you know that's a different place than this. So what's interesting to me is there may be other times in your life or any of our lives where we're like, oh, I'm hearing these voices in my head and I'm like talking to myself and I'm having a convo with myself. But what you're describing has a different physiological component in that you're experiencing something physical and different. And when we had Teresa Caputo on, Suzanne Giesemann, there's like a look in their eyes when people are channeling that's like, oh, that's not this world. There's something else.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, and I can't speak for you, but that's what's interesting to me is that what you're describing is it's something altered,
Yes.
right?
Yes. It doesn't feel what we know to be here in the same way. But the more it becomes part of your life, you start going, oh, there are a few worlds on Earth. And most of the time, most of us are living in the one that we're in this body, we're in this identity, we're having the life we're supposed to have. But many people, when they open their spiritual connection, it suddenly changes everything.
Now, there's a difference between when you get information for yourself and when you get information for other people.
Yes.
I want to tackle that, but right before we do, define channeling.
Yes.
And I want to know also more specifically, like we just got to Zachary.
Yeah, let's unpack the cohort.
I got a
of-
lot to say just about that, but I want to hear about the others and then how we get to the other entities.
I mean, is there an HR department for all the people that are
It's
rolling
funny you
with
should mention it.
Well, Zachary Levi will play him in the movie. So, it's voice only, but that's a nice job, right?
What is channeling?
So, a couple of things. I say that you're channeling when you are in when you're just flowing with something you're really good at. So some people who cook and they don't follow a recipe book and they get out of their head and they feel really alive, to me, there's a level of connection and flow. So on a broad level, we can be channeling, musicians channel all the time. Songs come from the ethers and all of that kind of realm is a whole other realm.
Flow.
There was an interview I saw recently with Bob Dylan at the height of, or actually it was near the end of his career, and I forget who the
He
interview
still has
was.
a career. What are you saying?
It was. I actually don't know where Bob Dylan is these
Oh,
days.
for
So
Pete's
I'm
sake.
sorry, Bob. I apologize.
He's his own prophet.
But they were talking to him about the early days of his career.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know where those songs
Yeah.
came from. They just appeared to me. They
Right.
just arrived. And he was actually acknowledging that, like, at this stage of his career that he was at during that interview, he couldn't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
that was okay for him. But there was clearly some opening that he had and access to something there that, like, was unlike anything else that he had experienced.
True. And my own guides said to me years later that they got to me first through songwriting, which happened to me at 21, 2 years earlier. And when that happened, it was magic. I loved music my whole life. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing melodies tied to lyrics and I would literally hear it. And I knew enough chords on the guitar at that point to kind of get the song down. And still to this day, when I create music, the music is often, it just comes through, or the lyrics, some songs are just there, fully formed within 10 minutes. And you're like, how?
But I think this is a really interesting, like, overlap that has some tension to it in the definition. Because some musicians may say,
Oh, absolutely.
I create the songs and
Absolutely.
my brain is working something out and there isn't a magical open consciousness quality to it. Rick Rubin has a little bit of a different philosophy where he describes artists as having antennae and that they're sensing and sort of translating whatever type of consciousness is around. So like there's like this overlap. And what's interesting is that a lot of people who describe having access to spiritual experience or extrasensory experience, spirit guides, ability to visually imagine, describe a level of access in their childhood to creativity that sort of seems to form the fundamental building
Interesting.
blocks of their ability to later participate in what is considered extrasensory.
Ah, that's interesting. So creativity was my safe space. That was where I was prolific, and that was where I could create. I still to this day, if people ask what, people always want your identity. and people want to know what you do for work, and then they assume that means that's who you are. And for me, I'm a creator. Like, I'm a creator and a builder. I've been that since I was little. It just so happens that right now, my path is to create and build in the realm of spirituality, self-growth, transformation, and music.
Going back to the overlap, both positive and, concerning for those people who are trying to discredit this idea.
Yeah, people might say he's just creative. He's making it up.
Sure.
That's the rub, right? Is like, on one hand, people who are in that flow state can have awareness and words that come to them that they've never thought about before, and things come together in a way that seems magical or extra abilitied or divinely intervened. And on the same regard, people can say, well, we're just kind of making it up and being super creative. And these super creative people have the ability to see from multiple different perspectives, and therefore it's all within them. I personally like the story, and I have a similar experience. And at a certain point, it became like, how much am I making up? Like, where's the objective reality in this? Like, is it a really interesting story? Is it true? And you can kind of gauge by the felt sense of the people that you're sharing the information with. But there is a level of creative imagination in order to make sense of realms that can't be, quote unquote, seen with our normal eyes.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important point. One of the shadow sides of channeling that I quite quickly saw, because I was taken into the channeling world, which I didn't even know existed. I was from self-growth. That was my passion. My passion was go to a workshop to kind of uncover your crap so that you can come out happier and a bit lighter and do what you're here to do. That was my jam, and I thought that was fantastic. I quite quickly got taken into the channeling world through a partner I had who was also an author and a channeler, which was a very big and important relationship for me. And he was a speaker for a group, and I was invited to be a speaker there. And then I was invited to be a speaker at other places. And what I witnessed in the channeling world that was a shadow then, and may still be for some people now, it may hopefully be less now, was a lot of worship energy. And this idea that, oh, if the channeled entity said it, then it must be superior to everyone else. And I was always the opposite. I was like, no, the channeled entity is like any good friend giving you advice, and you might take on their advice. And because of their advice, you might not use their advice, but because it gives you a chance to look at it. I was so against the idea that you're here as some puppet, that you're supposed to follow spirit's instructions. I don't ascribe to that. That to me is actually an unspiritual philosophy, because to me, our spirituality is our humanity and what we're doing here. I talked to you about Beaches. You put an imprint out into the world energetically with your performance, and everyone involved in that movie. That movie I think was so huge because it was an emotional release valve. We didn't see many women friendship stories. It was grief, which was taboo still at the time. And I think the reason it hit a nerve was it was a beautifully done film, but it had a lot of powerful feminine energy that we were missing. And back then, movies were key. I'm not saying they can't still be now, but I was recently saying to a 25-year-old friend who was like, I'm not really into movies, I'm more into spirituality. And I said, movies and music were my gateway before I found spirituality, and I still can enjoy them. But I explained to her, I said, they served a purpose 30 years ago that is now being served by other things as well. So they still have their place. But 30 years ago, there were very few places that we as humans were allowed to go and feel and witness ourselves, and especially because therapy was taboo. But you could go and watch a movie and go, oh, wow, I identify with that character. And so, for me, the movies were like church in a way because of the experience I would have. But to your point, I think the thing about channeling that people forget is there is a level of making it up. Meaning, I am not donked on the head involuntarily and pushed onto a stage to channel for people. I'm agreeing to the whole experience. I'm collaborating. And they have even said this, and I agree with them, to the best of my ability as a human who has a capacity for words, which they've said they use my capacity for language and they use my capacity for empathy. It's still limited. It's still a very humanized version of what it would be there. They've talked about music in their realm, and they've said you wouldn't like it. It would sound discordant. It would sound atonal. It would sound arrhythmic. You need melody because it it lines up with the heart frequency, which is your gateway on earth. Your heart is your gateway on earth, which is why I think we as humans, no matter how oppressed or suppressed we have been or are, everyone loves this. And we've been taught to kind of transpose it onto romantic relationships or the love you have for a child. We're kind of allowed to do those. But actually, I think, hopefully, as a society, we, through all the conversations that we're having now, are recognizing, no, friendship love is huge. Beaches again. Friendship love, tribal love. The Z's have said we would be less interested in romantic relationship if we lived more tribally and communally. They aren't saying we wouldn't still have them, but part of this, I've got to find my soulmate, is usually stemming from there are some areas of disconnection in your life that you're missing. It doesn't mean a beautiful soulmate can't come along and make it all so much richer, and to have a companion and someone you can mirror with. But let's be honest, even when you're in a great relationship, you're a really happy person when you have a lot of cylinders firing in your life with a lot of different people.
We still haven't defined channeling.
The definition of channeling in the way I do it would be you are giving voice to or allowing an entity, an energy, or a guide through you to give information and to speak.
Entity
or to write.
Yeah, that's
entity,
Entity?
energy, or guide.
energy.
Mhm.
Guide.
Some people think of entity as a negative terminology.
Oh, I know.
So how do you know what you're connecting to if there's this vast array of entities, angels? Some people think demons, some
Yeah.
people think dark energies.
Yeah.
How do you know what is coming through or what you're inviting through?
I can't give a stock answer to that because that's not the thing I've studied and become an expert in. But what I can tell you from my own experience is I didn't do any readings for anyone. I basically did free readings for people for a few years before a friend of mine said, you should be doing this. But I tested. I tested myself, my life, the people I knew. By the time I was channeling, I felt very comfortable. I'm like, no, these guys are definitely benevolent. What I say to people now when they start channeling is the information helpful? Is it loving? Is it supportive? I'm not saying they're going to stroke your ego, and I'm not saying they're going to tell you you're right about everything. But there are people who will sometimes go, ooh, I think I picked up on something not good. And the answer there is, okay, you need to disconnect from that. You can say affirmations. I ask for the highest love and light to come through. But what I also witnessed, because I work with some of these clients, boundary issues in their life with toxic human relationships were often a factor. So they were going to spirit to try and find a good relationship. But because on the earth plane, they were playing out with their energy field abusive patterns, lo and behold, whether they were accessing something or not, or whether it was their own mind and that was as high as they could go, somewhat bossy or demanding guides could happen. And friend in the field recently was sent to me by another friend in the field.
Do you mean the literal field?
No,
The energetic field?
No, she's in the self-growth field, and
Okay.
she's quite out
She's
there.
a
She's
real,
quite well known.
a
Yes,
tangible person.
yes, and she's a lovely person. And I was told that she was having channeling experiences by this friend, and she needed someone to talk to about it because that's not her usual work. And we talked, and I tuned in on what was going on with her. And obviously, you always do it to the best of your ability. But there's this group. And I said to her, there's this really pushy one in the middle, and I don't like it. And I said, and it's not necessary. And she knew exactly what I was talking about. She knew exactly who I was talking about. She went, yeah, I feel a bit. But she was also, understandably, should I be channeling? And I was like, my rule is no. If there is a pushy thing trying to use you or get through you, no, absolutely not. It can calm down. And in the session, we actually had some conversation where it's like, no, you need to calm down. This is not your chance to come through a body. This is a collaborative relationship. Oh, we're on so many questions
There's a
coming
lot
up
of
now.
questions. So I want to get more specific.
Sure.
So now we have like this nice landscape.
Okay,
So you hear this voice,
sure.
and was it a different voice that identified these other two Z?
That happened
They all
later.
had Z names, which is why you call them the Zs.
That happened when I was being interviewed.
What do you mean, Lee?
So my partner who I was with at the time would often speak to me while I was channeling, and he would ask all kinds of questions.
And that's how you met the other entities. And so the information that comes to you is that there are some entities that are
They're a large group. I've been
Okay.
told they are 88 beings, but that they can also extend wider into source, meaning source energy. So they said, you often think of yourselves as fixed. We are not fixed as humans. You know, we around this table are a composite of every experience we've had, every person that's influenced us, but we think of ourselves as these singular identities with singular names. And they said, we can also access other beings, other dimensions to bring the information through. So they're not, it's very tempting to try and think of it as a fixed group or a fixed, things aren't very fixed when you get off Earth. And that's the kind of rabbit hole I've learned from. Like the more questions you ask, the more mirrors open and the more you can just keep going, which is why I think at a certain point you have to decide, is my goal here to just keep opening more mirrors? Or have I opened enough mirrors that I now want to actualize what I've experienced and bring it to Earth and see if it's useful to me and to other people?
yes, those are further down the road questions. I'm still stuck on you're on the tube
Yes.
and you're hearing this.
Yes. So what is it you want to know specifically about that moment?
I want to know, what did you do after?
I went home from work and I
Okay.
wrote. Because I wanted to record it. You can't remember it when you do it in your head. And this is why I always encourage people, write your channeling down. And so we go, I don't want to write it down. I just want to, and I'm like, cool, that's its own experience. That's a visionary experience. But the reason you write it down is twofold. Number one, you write it down so that you have a record of it. And in my case, I wanted to study it over time and see how valid certain things were or weren't. But also, it does something to you to read this information back. And this goes back to something we were talking about a minute ago with love and the heart. I once had a very successful client. She was an Australian businesswoman, had all the success and material anybody could ever want. But she had so many broken relationships in her life because she didn't hang out in intimacy very long, and she could get quite aggressive with people around her. So she came to me because she'd heard of me, and she was working with me on both relationships and a desire to connect more spiritually. I set her the task of channeling for herself. She was really annoyed at me and said, isn't that what I'm paying you for? And I said, yes, and I will be channeling for you in each session. But trust me, I just need you to go through this process for a few weeks. She did it. She came back and she said, well, I did it, but it didn't work. And I went, oh, okay, so you got no words. And she went, no, I got words, but they were ridiculous. And I went, okay, do you mind reading them to me? And so she, let's say her name was Jill. She went, okay. She went, Jill, you are a loving soul. Well, that's not true, is it? Because I'm not a loving soul. And I just said, Jill, just carry on. So she read all this stuff out, and these were very loving words. She had never spoken to herself in that way. She had very aggressive parents when she was growing up, which is where a lot of the trauma came from. And so after a while of her disbelieving all this, we were going back and forth on the sentences that she disagreed with. And I just said, have you ever written words to yourself in that way ever, or spoken to yourself in that way? And it was the first time she stopped fighting me and was silent for about 10, 15 seconds. And I shared something with her that the Z's had said to a client just before. When you access channeling, you calibrate to a frequency of love that you might not be used to. I think of me with my self-judgment and my self-attack, and all of a sudden, there's this new support team that I didn't have access to. It changes you. It's not like, oh, good, I have a voice and that's helpful. It actually starts to change you. It starts to change the way you perceive yourself. It starts to change the way you perceive things. So this frequency of love, I was going home and privately spending an hour and a half at night writing all these questions. But I will say this, when you're growing up gay and you're born in the 70s, and certainly if you're born earlier, this is even more true, you're very good at compartmentalizing. You have to be. You have to have a life that you're not allowed to talk about inside you. And you have to, so in a weird way, I almost look back now and think, oh, that primed me. So I don't remember being fazed. I remember being like, this is fascinating. Like it was this thing I couldn't wait to go home after my job to. And it's weird now because it feels like such a distant memory. But at the time, it was something I immersed myself in. And it changed me.
Which was harder, coming out as gay or as a channeler?
Coming out as gay was pretty brutal with my parents. It was great with my friends. And I came out at 16. And I had a very difficult experience telling my mom. So then everything went into, I'm very close with my mom, and we were very close then, but for about 5 years that fractured that relationship. We repaired it later. Coming out as a channeler is way worse because it gets in the way of your connection with people. Like, even the fact that I know you have the 2 books which are based on channeling, but in my work, someone recently called me a soul therapist, which I liked the term because often I'm struggling to explain to people what it is I do. But the truth is, I can sit here at this table and I can say, I'm an energy intuitive, I'm a musician, I'm a self-growth facilitator or spiritual teacher, and I'm a channeler, and everyone goes to channeler because it's the weirdest thing in the room. So the problem with being a channeler is if anyone has skepticism about it, or they're afraid of it, or they're judgmental of it, or they are suspicious of you because of it, all the rest is off. I can be having a great conversation with someone, and all of a sudden it can change because of their belief system around that. And I'm like, that's interesting. We were actually having a really nice time.
It's like when I tell people I'm an actor. It's like, ooh.
I do have a problem with the term because what is the difference between that and just receiving information?
I agree.
You said you're a musician.
Yeah, musician, energy intuitive.
Energy intuitive.
Spiritual teacher is not a term I like, but self-growth teacher, facilitator.
Great.
And then channeler.
So let's just focus on energy intuitive for a second. Yeah. Because we've talked about on this podcast before that I think the word psychic has been co-opted, misused.
Totally.
There's a ton of misinformation and people, it doesn't work for a lot of reasons, right? So people are looking for alternatives to describe what it means to sit down with someone and have either intuition or empathy. It could be that you sit down and you can feel them.
Yeah. And also, I think this is a good place for me to say, it's not that I have a problem with energy.
No.
And it's not that I have a problem
No, but the term, I understand.
Right. So, yeah, like, it's not that I have a problem with intuition. And I think it's important, like, we didn't ask you here for me to, like, disprove your experience. But for me, it's like, I don't know if there's a difference between, look, some people are better at reading people than others. Like, that's something we're all comfortable saying, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
but that's what I'm talking about. You can sit down and sort of feel someone, and you can feel someone on multiple planes of existence.
No, there you lost me again.
But I'm going to tie it in.
What do you mean?
Okay, so
you feel, you feel them on multiple... So
it's like, so when we were talking to Teresa Caputo, she says she uses herself and she gets signals herself about information. So she's like, when someone has a death in a certain way, I taste, and she described the taste, right? So for example, when you sit down with someone and you are highly empathic, or you have, you're an energy intuitive or whatever that might be, it could be like, oh, what's going on for you? I can clearly feel it's grief. Oh, it's not a mystery. Oh, it actually feels more like romantic grief than it does a parent who passed.
You can feel the difference? If I walk into a room, because I was raised in a crazy house, if I walk into a room, I can pretty much clock where people are at.
Yes.
And I think a lot of women may report this, or people on the feminine spectrum.
Definitely.
That, like, my ex-boyfriend who used to say, like, why do you know I'm upset when I don't know I'm upset? I'm like, because I know. So, and I think that's true. Like, Valerie can tell when Jonathan and I haven't spoken for 12 hours before we sit in our chairs.
So this is a good point. This is a good point. This helps me understand where we need to go. Okay.
So is Valerie, forgive me, Valerie, is Valerie an energy intuitive? No, like, you can feel it in the air when two people are being icy.
So let me explain how we use the label energy intuitive for me.
Great.
I mean, there are several things I do, but let me take it back to when I did one-on-one sessions for 15 years. And my job, you may have called me. I couldn't see you. I would know whatever name you had given me.
Sure.
And I would speak to you. I would say to you at the beginning, do you have any specific questions you want to ask me up front? If not, we're going to get to them in about 25 or 30 minutes, and you can ask me anything you want. And I'm just going to start talking and telling you everything I'm getting.
Is that what we're going to do for the rest of this episode?
We can if you want.
I want to.
Are you sure?
Well, I'm hard to read because I exist on the internet. Everybody thinks they know me.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So you'd have to pull something out that
Sure.
that I would know. Anyway, but go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
and my job wasn't performing a party trick to kind of prove something. It was the thing about my job is I can't verify anything.
Right.
And actually, in a way, that was what trained me to do it for groups. And when I stand on camera and do what I call my energy update, which happens at the beginning of every month, and I say at the beginning, I'm Lee, I'm an intuitive, and I take the pulse on what might be showing up for you psychologically, emotionally, and energetically. And then I go through 8 themes that I receive from the same place I receive information about people. And then I riff on them and explain to people how they might navigate what's coming up. Of course, not everyone is going to find themselves in the 8 themes. And of course, there are going to be a load of people who don't like me, don't like that kind of thing, of course. But for those who do, as an energy intuitive, in a way, what I'm doing is inviting them to look at their own energy, their thoughts, their emotions, and help them reorganize how they're feeling. That's what I hear the most. When people talk to me about my energy updates, which are probably the main thing I'm known for at the moment, that's probably
Right.
the biggest thing. People go, I feel seen. It helped me deal with something I didn't know was really going on, but you articulated it for me. Me and my mom always speak about the energy updates every month, so it gets us going and having a conversation. So I'm not interested in how good I am or not. I'm interested in how useful I am. My goal is to be useful to people for whom this is of use.
So I'm thinking of I'm trying to find examples if I'm tuning into my own energy,
Yep.
right? So this is not a statement on Tony Robbins, but there's a meditation that he does that I really like.
Great.
And, we start from this place of getting into our body. He teaches us to drop down, get
Uh-huh.
out of our head and into our body. And I'm like, okay, I'm learning to do that. And then he asks us to conjure positive memories
Yeah.
and to feel them in our body, right? Joe Dispenza also talks about this, right? Then he asks me to imagine things that haven't even happened that are also good. Oh, I can do that. And you feel it in your body. And the idea is that you feel some sort of energetic elevation. That's the best way I can describe it. If you're in a poopy mood before and you're in a better mood after, you've increased a certain amount of serotonin, right?
Yes.
You've increased your physiological milieu to facilitate a different energy state. So that if I'm in a shitty mood when I wake up, and after I do this meditation, I can say I can make my smoothie, I can wake my kid, I can be loving, I can be helpful. That is a shift that I just made in some sort of energy field,
Yes,
correct?
absolutely.
Did I do it?
Yes, you did. You shifted your energy from one state to another.
Right.
Yeah.
And you could see that if you roll over in bed. I just put us in bed together. If someone were to roll over in bed, which sometimes people say oh, my partner was in a really bad mood this morning, right?
Yeah.
You can know that, you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
And then that shifts and it would be noticeable.
Yes. And there's a difference between being able to recognize someone is down or knowing perhaps one of the reasons why.
Ooh.
That's the difference. Empaths can feel energy. They have different levels of skill as to how much they can interpret what's going on for the person. That's where the more psychic channeler side comes in.
Right.
So I've met many empaths who are like, oh my God, I'm just feeling all the emotion in the
Yes.
room. My advice to them is always, then you need to learn how not to. Because otherwise you're hostage, because usually empaths are not hostage to joy.
No, we're
They're
not.
hostage to pain and suffering.
100%.
And I went through that myself. So what I had to learn to do was train myself as to where and when I focused. It took me years and years and years. And there'll still be moments in my personal life where I'll come up against it. But, having recently met some empaths who are very much in that journey of, oh my God, I'm just a sponge.
Well, I think I'm just responsible for the whole world suffering anyway. So then I have to feel it all.
And on some weird level, no, you're not responsible. I'm not going to break it
I'm
to you.
responsible
No,
for
no, no, no,
everything.
no, 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 no. But we do need a beaches too. I'm just saying. No. No. On some level, what the Z's say we're here for is to go on our own path of healing and to the best of our ability, help elevate the frequency of the planet. The problem is people think they have to do it all by themselves. So the isolated empath or spiritual person goes, I'm really supposed to help save everyone. And we get into bad discernment over what that really means. Our job is to do the best we can and to heal our own stuff, because we've all imbibed what they call the human energy template. So when we got to this planet, depending on where we were born, when we were born, and what we were born into, we're going to inherit a certain emotional temperature. If you're born to very frosty parents and they are cold and they're not emotional, they're incredibly cerebral, and you come in as this very emotional kid, that's going to be an interesting recipe. Are the parents conscious enough to go, our child is different. We won't try and make them like us. We'll try and support them with what they need. Or, as is common for most of us growing up in prior generations, the parent thinks the child is wrong,
right,
and tries to make so then the
squeeze
parent,
them into the mold
the kid
that they,
then has to unpack all that stuff. We've all imbibed and inherited certain energies. And the one thing they say a lot, which I love as someone who was so good at self-attack and blaming myself for everything years ago, they always say, it's not yours. It's not yours. You're carrying something that's in the air, and your job as a human is to try and alleviate it from yourself, and then you become the formula of someone who moved through that. It's why the friends who are now in horrible grief, but you went through horrible grief 10, 15 years ago, and it almost killed you, but you got through it. They're talking to you about their grief without even knowing why. They don't know what you went through, but there's something about your energy field that is a place their grief can start to elevate. So this is how energy fields work, and the collective energy field of the world, as we know, it's not great down here. Like, one of the things I had to come to terms with, which helped me as an empath, is like, there is brutality and suffering and darkness on this planet. I didn't want to fully acknowledge that, even though I'd had some of my own experiences around that. And I also had been adjacent to people who'd gone through some horrific things. But once I realized that, it allowed me to stop trying to fight it with the light and instead go, okay, we're on a planet of duality. There's light, there's dark, there's up, there's down. I need to do my best to stay as balanced and as centered as I can and move through it. And I'll keep learning as I go. So in a way, what you just said, I think many of us have worn that mantle of, I've got to save everyone's suffering. I think it's actually a spiritual truth, but we aren't supposed to overly personalize it or think we should do it all ourselves. There are a lot of us here on the planet. There are more people want good than don't. I mean, it's a very small group that manage to, bring a lot of darkness to the planet. Aziz have said that.
And then because of social media, it gets amplified, right?
Of
and so
course.
people start thinking that is...
When we're at a party of 50 people, and it's 50 lovely people, and one person has a massive tantrum in the corner, who do we go home remembering? I was at an event recently where there was a big drama, and 5 of the people who were there were saying to me, wow, that was a real drama. And I said, let's not let that be the first thing we parrot about our friend's event, because our friend had a lovely event that something went wrong in, and it wasn't that friend's fault. Let's not tell that story. But I knew why the people were doing it, because I would have done the same years ago. Drama gets our root chakra, and drama and inflammatory, and it's so magnetizing to us, or it has been. And the trick is, can we magnetize and create something else on the planet? You guys are doing it with this podcast, for example.
Tell us about it.
Well, you are creating discussion for people to examine what they believe, what they experience, what they understand. The people who watch this will either align with both of you or one of you, or they'll enjoy when you two are disagreeing, even though you don't disagree because you love each other. So that makes this energy field very safe. But the fact that you will sometimes have very differing opinions, even though it might look like there's some kind of level of not conflict, but disagreement, what you're actually doing is you're stretching the parameters of what's possible. And we all know that at the moment on the planet, if there's one thing we need to be able to do, it's to have healthy, loving disagreements rather than people get triggered by something they disagree with and they just want to kill the other person.
I mean, that's a very good explanation of what we call our healthy tension. Often we describe different sides of a similar experience.
How do I know when I'm talking to you and when I'm talking to the energies that you're channeling?
Because when I channel, I now close my eyes because I don't like channeling open-eyed, because people start looking at your eyes. And it's creepy and it's kind of distracting, because my job as a channeler is to kind of, as much as I can, bypass my own mind. So if someone's looking at me, So I stopped doing that
So
after a
you're
while.
not, you don't want to be receiving that information.
I don't,
'cause you
no,
need to
no, I
receive
don't want
that.
them trying to take that energy from my eyes.
Right.
That was what I noticed at workshops. I was like, oh, this isn't. And also, they're getting distracted, and they're also thinking
You have
that
very
I'm
pretty
the
eyes.
thing that. Thanks. They're thinking that I'm the thing that they're supposed to be attaining, and actually, that's not true. I'm a person who is putting something out into the room or bringing something through me that is designed to help them find themselves.
Okay, here's a fun question. What's the longest time period you've ever channeled? Like, do you go on like 48-hour channeling
No, God,
experiences?
no. God, no, no,
So
no,
what's
no,
it
no.
like?
No. Because I get hot. So if I channel for, okay, you have two books in front of you. You have
Yes.
Energy Speaks and you have The Future Human. The Future Human is a book I did with Regina Meredith.
Yes.
That was a very intense book for me as a
It's-
human and as a body to do.
Yeah.
And it took me about 2 weeks to recover. We did about 3 hours of channeling a day
Well,
with
can
a
you
lunch
explain
break.
the format of the book so people can understand?
Got it. So Regina Meredith is a brilliant journalist with Gaia TV. She's a truth seeker around the hidden in the world and the shadow of the world. So when we decided to collaborate on this book, I did know that some of the topics we would be going into would not be the kind of topics that I would personally spend time in. They aren't actually, it isn't good for me to spend my time in too many of those areas. But because I trusted Regina and I know how on it she is with her research, I said yes. So the book is a series of conversations, and the audible version is the actual conversations as they happened, of us sat in the studio, I'm channeling, and she is going through all these questions about our world today, war, AI, technology, human health. How did we get into this state? So it's, it took me 2 weeks to recover.
But all of the answers are from this entity,
The Z's. Yes. And I call them the Z's because my audience started calling them the Z's. They never knew whether they were going to get Zachary, Zayadora, or Zafariah. And then around 2013, they said, we're no longer differentiating. We're just going to speak as one group because you need unity, not differentiation. So we're just going to unify again as one voice.
Who are the other 85?
I don't know all of them. The only ones that I encountered were more functional. So for example, I encountered a couple of angelic beings. I encountered a couple of beings who apparently are to do with my energy stability when I'm channeling. So, there's all kinds, there's engineers, there's admin, there seems to be a whole kind of, not everyone is on the podium in that group, and nor should they be, I guess.
Do you write them all out in case we
No.
ever meet all 88?
No, I am the worst. I think because I've been doing this publicly for 21 years.
I will make that spreadsheet for
Okay,
you. Like,
you can.
I want to know all their
would,
different characters.
With you, I would sit down and let you do that.
I mean, I would be so
conversation.
curious.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm wondering, are they different facets of an experience? Are they different gender expressions? Are they
Right.
different? What purpose, right, do they serve?
And there was Zachary, obviously, is a male name. And when Zafariah and Zayadora came along, they said you would understand Zayadora as the feminine to Zachary's masculine, and you would understand Zafariah as right in the middle, kind of equal male and female. And they said how you understand male and female is not how we would term it. But I was a little embarrassed to... I had an audience for my channeling when Zafariah and Zayadora emerged. And I'll be honest, most of my friends are women, and, I love women. And I was a little embarrassed to be going out there saying I was channeling female entity. I was like, oh, is this okay? And it was, but this is the gift of channeling. It helps you get over yourself.
Okay, so this is what I was going to ask. When you're channeling, let's say, any entity, but a female entity, what does it feel
I
different?
loved Zayadora because it was peace. My God, it was wide. It was peaceful. For me, it was like an embodied experience of deep, feminine, strong energy. So strong, but very feminine. It felt very wide from my heart. Zachary is a little different, and I experience them now not quite as wide as Zayadora was. Zafariah was a little uncomfortable for me because she had a personality, which the others don't really. So she had a bit of a personality, and so it was a bit odd.
And how do you know who's going to show up?
Well, now
through?
they're just they said in
blended.
2013 we're just going to be one group again. because it's better that people aren't focused on who is it, what gender.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
So what does the voice sound like? Is it male?
Yes.
Is it-
Yeah. So when I hear it, it's still the voice of Zachary. And when it comes through my
Got it.
body, it sounds like, I think, a slightly faster version of my own voice. And a little more,
He's British.
yeah, actually more British than I am. Which again is interesting because, you know, you'd like to have some control over it, but you don't.
It's like when you choose your Siri.
Yeah, kind of. I have a friend, Wendy Kennedy, who's a great channeler, and she kind of sounds Australian when she does it. It's interesting.
But she's not Australian.
She's not. She's
Interesting.
very American, although she's quite European in spirit.
When you sit down to channel for someone, for example, if you
Mhm.
were to channel for me or for Mayim or for us as a
Yes.
group,
An entity.
is it that you're just getting information from your guide? Do you think that they have consulted with what our guides want, and then there's some sort of back channel communication which
Right.
then gets
do
delivered
do
to
I have
you?
a Zachary?
No, you have someone else.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Zachary's no. Source is the same.
Yes.
You're getting messages from your guides.
Right. Great. This is,
My assumption
Yeah.
is that your guides have had some backside communication
Right.
with the guides of the people that you're sitting to
course.
communicate
What
with,
everyone would assume.
and then you're filtering that through to you, whereby, or you could have connected, for example, directly to Mayim's guides and then heard that directly, but the way that you operate, you actually have a relationship with the Z's, so the information would get filtered through the Z's. The Z's are not Mayim's guides. So there would need to be some sort of data
Right.
transfer in order for you to get the
Yes.
information that's valuable to her.
first,
I have
first-
guides even if I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Of course, we all have to assume that.
That's the
Got
working
it.
assumption of what I'm
Yes.
trying to explain is
And-
that if everyone has guides, they're sort of have information on that person's behalf, but if they cannot access it directly from their own guides, they're going to go through a channeler or an intuitive of some kind.
Yes.
And that information needs to be communicated. So it's not that the Z's are the guides for everyone, but they would maybe be like, this is kind of a little bit like AI agents. Your AI agent would communicate with the AI agent of the person who you're going to communicate
That's
with,
a good
and
way
then
of putting
make
it.
an understanding of
Yeah.
what the information is, and then it happens to go back through your mouth.
You're asking me this like I should know the answer. And I mean, I can sit here and think about it, but I do it. So I've never questioned how the sausage is made. I just know how to make the sausage. And basically, and there's two ways I work.
I like to think about the workflow.
Right. Okay. No, and that's good. That's good. And that's why you're wired the way you're wired with that technical mind of yours, which is great. And I love technical people because I'm not normally so technical. I can come at tech and organization and structure on the back of, I'm kind of experiential first, and then I organize. So there are two ways I work. And this is true for many intuitives. I can be sat here with you and I can start getting messages, and part of it is feeling. And yes, is my channel to them open? Yes, it is. But it's not like they're feeding me words about you and I'm just copying what they're saying. That's me being an intuitive. Me being a channeler is something else. So I'll have my eyes closed. They'll be coming through and they'll be talking in a slightly more otherworldly way than I ever would. But regarding your question, yes, there is a level of permission that you are giving, or anyone who is sitting down to a reading is giving, to be in that reading. And sometimes people, I think they overly attribute the power to the intuitive or the psychic. It's a two-way exchange. And it's really about, what is it that you're meant to hear? So it's not me sitting there going, oh, I'm going to tell Jonathan something he's been avoiding for years and I'm going to hit him over the head with that. That's not my job.
That's why I brought you here.
Thank you. That's not my job. And I just came here to meet CC Bloom. Sorry about that. So my point is, if you're doing your job right, what you're opening to is something you are a vessel for. But you might leave my room or my phone session with you or my workshop, and I don't fully understand what it is I was just a vessel for you for, but I know if I tune in on being the vessel, and I know that feeling in my body so well now, I know, okay, I did what I was supposed to do. I may never fully understand it.
So this is another place where, and we talk about, there's a partnership in this energy exchange.
100%.
So if you come in here with your arms crossed and you're like,
Oh, yeah.
this is BS, I don't want it. Yeah, you're not going to receive it, not because you get some award for being a skeptic. It's that if there is some energy that is exchanged between humans, which we know that there is a place of openness that allows that to come through. Just like when you go to kiss someone and they don't want to be kissed,
100%.
right? You can sometimes tell from across the room that this isn't going to happen. That's what we're talking about also. So there has to be some willingness and openness. And then I think a lot of people, you kind of dismiss it as like, oh, well, you'll believe anything. You're so gullible, right? We got my mother a psychic reading for her birthday last year. Since my father passed away, which was 10 years ago, since he passed away, she's been a lot more open to other...
Death does that to people.
Other realms. And I come from, part of my family is Hungarian, and there's a lot of cool, spooky women in many Hungarian families that have strange intuition, beautiful intuition, like
your mother says she's psychic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. Anyway, but when we got my mother this reading, she was so excited, and she went and she had an amazing time. And it was like, well, they told me this about your father, and it confirmed it. And my kids, who are very skeptical, were like, well, that's because she wanted to believe that. But I'm also thinking maybe wanting to believe opens something up. We know from the placebo effect. We know from double-blind studies that the placebo effect is real in that if you believe something, if you are open to something, you are more receptive to actual growth, improving immune properties. Like, we know these things happen. Belief is incredibly important. We talked about this with Dr. Amir Raz. Dr. Raz is a hypnotist and a magician who's also a neuroscientist. And what he studies is belief and how much belief actually changes our brains, it changes our physiology. So for me, this is like all on that kind of similar plane.
I was once working with a woman, this was years ago, and Aziz said something to her at the end of the session when I was channeling them for her. And she'd gone through this major trauma with someone in her life. And I had been encouraging her to go and work with a somatic therapist for her body, because it was clear that there was so much going on in her mind. There was too much up there, which meant she couldn't get down into her body and her body wouldn't open. So Aziz said to her, because she was very scared to do it, and they said, part of the reason you're going to work with a somatic therapist is you are suffering from the effects of what another human did to you. And it's not just the skill of the therapist that's going to be the healing for you. It's going to be that another human helps you put yourself back together. So to me, there's always that element. There's always that element of us helping each other. And I think this is where people go wrong with psychics. They point the finger at the psychic or the medium or the intuitive and they go, oh, well, and it's like, no, they're just an ambassador for a dimension that you may or may not ever believe in, may or may not go into. But they're not special. They're just experiencing something, and they're tapped into, for whatever reason, for their path, something that already exists that all of us potentially can tap into or are living in. When I did a course recently called Next Level Healer, I looked up persecution of healers with Google. Because, this is a wound I've worked with so many people over the years, and I've come up against it myself as my own work has gone through growth stages. It's like, oh, am I safe out here, and is this okay? And when you Google why have healers been persecuted in society, it goes back to religion and medicine control. So prior to the times when religious and medicinal control came in, there were lots of people who had all kinds of helpful plants and herbs, but it all stems from there. And the way to ostracize people was to persecute them. We know that the witch trials got rid of really powerful, brilliant women who weren't allowed to be in power, and a load of them just got bumped off under the guise of being a witch. So to me, this is such an ancient history, and I've heard that from them. We're just in a period of society where it has been, not in every culture, but in the Western world, certainly scrubbed out, denied. No, this is the system, this is what you're going to do. And actually, you can't stop people tapping into spirit. So death is a great opener for people. And it's great your kids are skeptical. It's great they're skeptical. Let them be skeptical to the end of their life, or let them be skeptical until they're 24 and something happens to them. Because this is the other thing. I think people often are fixated on spiritual teachers, gurus, psychics as trying to trick people into something.
Well,
Now,
a lot of people, and a lot of people are,
trust
trying
me,
to,
and there are.
yeah.
But in my experience, and I've worked with thousands of healers around the world now, most of them are really loving, good people with, like we all have, their own stuff, but they are committed to, as the Z's call it, working in the dimension of healing. Even when I did my latest course, Next Level Healer, I knew the word healer was going to be a bit of a problem, but I was determined, and it was like, no, that is the word. So I set about redefining what is the word healer. We're all healing each other all the time. Your worst enemy is a healing force in your life, even though you don't like it. Our friends and our loved ones will help us heal when we're going through something. But there are those on the planet who stand for the dimension of healing. They might be a nurse. They might be a doctor. They might be an acupuncturist. They might be a kids counselor. There's so many different hats you can wear to help people transform their lives.
They might just be a codependent.
That too. So it was interesting doing Next Level Healer and kind of going to Google, going, I've never Googled this. And it was interesting, if you Google why are healers so persecuted in society, you see it all there and you see the history of it laid out. And you're like, so, one of the things I said to the healers as we were going through the wound part is I said, this is a wound that has been carried for hundreds of years. It's lineage that we all interact with as we put our heads above the parapet and stand for what we're standing for. But if you're compelled to stand for it, that's your life, that's your path. You're not going to back away from it. You're just going to have to do some work on the part of you that is nervous every time you want to step forward.
I want to know what the most surprising information is that you've received from your entities. Meaning, was there ever something that when it came through, you were like, there is no way that I would have generated this? Either something that came true for someone or something that you were like, I didn't know the answer to Avogadro's number, and now I do.
Yeah, it's funny, I'm not a scientific person. And I've noticed this with channelers, when you meet the channeler, you also see their alignment. Like I've met some of the very scientific channelers as people, and they're very scientific people. So there is an alignment. So I'm not necessarily the person who's going to give you some extraordinary number sequence through my channel. But there have been things along the way that about parts of history that I'd never investigated, or concepts that kind of, I was like, is that true? And then I'd hear about it or read about it years later. So there have been a number of those things over the years, which to me, it doesn't make me special. It just means everything is there in the field. It's whether or not you tap into it. Everything exists. It's just where our focus goes as to whether we're finding it or engaging with it. So I'm not very surprised these days, but I'm also like not looking to prove something to myself. So I guess I don't really track that stuff anymore. But in the early years, it was quite nice when you'd go, oh, I heard that from the Z's years ago. That's kind of nice to know. Or, oh, that's interesting. This concept the Z's gave me, there is, in Eskimo culture, that's a thing. So.
Do the Z's have any information or chime in on current events?
They do, because my audience asks. So every month I go live and take audience questions in a members community I have called The Portal. So yeah, I mean, they do.
How do they feel about the Epstein drama?
Smoke screen, the word smoke screen.
Say more.
There is truth in it, and it is being used to divert your attention away from other things. There is truth in the story, and that's why we're not supposed to look at it too deeply, because it will take us down a tunnel that will reveal a lot more, and a lot of people already, I think, have access to some of that stuff.
What is it that we're supposed to be looking at? If not that, if that's a smokescreen, and
don't make the Z's be a political analyst.
Yeah, and I also, I think what's tricky in our soundbitey culture
Yeah.
is anything I say now
Yeah.
can get pulled, can get used, and will get misinterpreted. That's a bigger question. But the one thing they've talked about is control. They've talked about planetary control, and that's a current goal and aim for a very small shadow group on the planet. And that is something that's been playing out, they say, for a very long time. But it's rising to the surface to be publicly seen now in a way that we've never, ever seen in our lifetime. And so for many people, it's a destabilizing or horrific experience and time. And for others who have perhaps been aware of some of the shadow stuff for years, it's kind of a time that some people have been waiting for, not looking forward to, because it's messy, it's difficult, it's dark. They did say a few years ago that we could be in a way worse position now. We could have been in a way worse position a decade ago than we are now. So they do say that there is a rising consciousness on the planet that is both also rising the dark and the control, because there's a frequency battle going on between those two poles. And the question is, how bad does it have to get before it gets better? And they say that that's very much up to how we as a humanity play it. And this is a time where we're moving out of top-down control of the people, and we're in a period of time, not just a year, but a set of years and decade that's all about people revolution and power back to the people. People remembering they have a lot of power before we farmed out our power and the way that we are living to a system that has slowly over time become even more corrupt.
If I were to ask Lee that same question,
Yes.
as opposed to asking what the Zs, would it be a different answer?
Well, and I was speaking on their behalf
Right.
from things that I've remembered that they've said. You know,
No,
they
for
would,
sure.
yeah. So
But that's sort of what I'm curious about in trying to sort of distinguish, right?
If people are only listening, there's a body posture that changes when you're
Recounting.
you're
that.
recounting and you're sharing that. When I asked you that
I
question,
wasn't even channeling, but yeah,
Right.
I'm going
But you're
back
getting
to
into-
that
right.
place. Yes,
but if someone is only listening to that answer, they won't get the nuance of looking at you and saying all of a sudden, in previous responses, you're engaged, your head is a certain way. And then now all of a sudden, when you start a more philosophical, planetary conversation, your head tilts, your eyes are gazing up,
Yes.
and you're pulling information from somewhere else, whether that, and I'm not speculating and I'm not
Sure.
denying that it is, the Z's versus, and this is why I think it almost doesn't matter in a way.
It matters.
It matters depending on who you are and where you are. So to me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
To you, it probably doesn't matter. I think when you've been in this kind of realm for a long
Right.
time, the details start
No,
to
but
matter.
I'm-
But I understand completely.
I want to know if I
and
ask
you're also
Lee,
being
right,
an ambassador
if
for
I
the
ask
audience.
Lee about the Epstein files, he might be like, fucking that's crazy. Like Trump was in it and blah, blah. I'm curious if there's that much of a difference for
The
you.
problem for me is I'm too privy to this stuff for too long. When they first started talking to me about shadow stuff, and it wasn't because they were telling me it against my will, I would ask questions about the world. I did not like the answers. Like, this was not the world I wanted to see. I was in I was in my own little self-growth spirituality bubble, and it was a curated bubble, and it was a bubble that was helping me. And then all of a sudden, shit got real. I don't know if I can say that, sorry. But it was a sobering, I went through a very sobering year and a half in about 2009, where this was a part of my reality, and it was coming to terms with, oh, well, if this is real and if this is true, and all I can say as Lee is, at the time, some of the stuff that they were telling me that seemed a little sci-fi, we are now watching on television screens. And that's kind of interesting. You're like, oh, they were not, stuff that I would have hoped they were wrong about, or I was
Like what?
maybe I'm channeling wrongly.
Like
Some
what?
of the stuff that we're seeing right now, some of the darkness that's playing out, acting out, and
I'll give you an example of something that could have easily sounded like sci-fi and or would be sci-fi to many people still. We just this week released an episode with Greg Braden. He talks about planetary control and the risk of giving up aspects of our humanity, and talks about the World Economic Forum working through the UN with the possibility of implanting chips into infants' brains to help the next generation compete in an increasingly competitive world.
Mm-hmm.
That can sound absolutely crazy to many people
Yes.
until you start to dig in and to say, are these conversations happening?
Yes.
Are there initiatives? Doesn't mean that they're being implemented yet, but that could it be possible that this is actually being talked about? Now, who gets control of those chips? How are they implemented? Where is the data stored? Like, all of a sudden you can see that's a huge, has many implications
Mhm.
for the entire population.
Yep.
Now you're like, is that dark energy? Is that positive energy? What, you're splitting the two sides of a coin to say, what is for humanity's benefit and what isn't. And it starts to get really sci-fi and freaky and kind of crazy.
You have, in theory, a connection to a source of like truth with a capital T.
Right. As yes, although many people, of course, would argue that
Sure.
or would disagree. I have a voice that I can go to when I am perplexed about my life or things in the world. And I speak to them. I might speak to them 3 times in a week. I might not speak to them for 4 weeks. It just depends what's going on in my life. And I'm in their energy all the time because of my work. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's all about, are you controlling fear or are you controlling love on the planet? And to keep people away from a loving world, you need them to be in fear. And we saw what happened in 2020 and the amount of unnecessary fear that was pumped into people at a time where that's not what, a healthy, and I'll say it, healthy world leadership would have taken care of people in a completely different way. And I think in a weird way, 2020 was the beginning of a worldwide wake up for many people. And we're still in that wake up, and there is a lot more to come out. The Z's have said, more is going to keep coming out that will shock people.
Do you talk to dead people?
Only for clients. So, and that hasn't been my choice, but they've come through in certain readings. But I'm
what does
not
that
like
feel
a
like?
traditional medium. Lovely. God, dead people are so happy. No, they are, really. They're so happy.
They don't have to be here anymore.
No, because they're no longer in the construct of ego and personality. And it's very moving when you verifying something for a person hits them, because of course, what do we want with our loved ones? We want the connection back in some way. So it's been an interesting aspect of the work, not one I've ever advertised.
Before we let you go, I wonder if you can sort of give us, your understanding of what you were placed here both to do and to channel.
Right. Yeah. So I didn't understand this as a kid. I was drawn to expression as a kid, and I was full of expression in many creative ways. But my job, or what I've understood of this period of my life, this last 21 years, is to I think make it safe and grounded for people to explore their spirituality. And occasionally I'm spirituality rehab. Occasionally I'm the person that will say, no, you don't have to believe what the healer told you. No, you don't have to believe what that, I think my own philosophy of life is I'm a human being having a spiritual experience, right? Which is most people. So both are true for me. And what I hear from people is, what I hear repeatedly is they like that I'm relatable and spiritual. Whereas I think when I was growing up, I didn't see that modeled a lot, the two together. But that wasn't anything by design. I think that's just, you get feedback when you're out there doing your thing. You hear the same feedback time and time again, and it tells you something about what you're standing for other people. Yeah.
And one more kind of personal question. What's it like for you to be in a romantic relationship?
Well, I'm single right now, so it's really easy right now.
No, but do you feel like your energy is essentially for channeling and those kind of interactions, or is there room for you to sort of engage on that
God,
level?
yeah. Oh, completely.
Got it.
Oh, completely. No, I am my most serious self when I'm doing this work. And and I don't normally bring these topics of conversation up. I mean, I have loads of connections in my life where these these things are not the topic of conversation.
Wow.
And I also need that balance. I'm a full-time worker. So it's like, you need a break. So people hand me spiritual books and I'm like, no, thanks. I'll do comedy. I'll do conversations about your life. I need the balance. But in relationship, I think, for me, like many, relationship has been like the learning area. I think I've had some beautiful relationships, and I think I'm coming to the point now. I just got divorced a couple of years ago. I was married for 5 years. We were together for almost 8. I've got to the point where I know I need to be in a partnership where the two of us have some kind of equality in what we do, and the interaction is coming from that place and wanting to walk alongside each other. I think in all my other relationships so far, I've been learning and growing. So I don't even really know who I'm going to be in my next partnership, because I'm in a bit of a new phase the last couple of years.
Well, it's
Yeah.
the first thing I would ask on date 1. Tell me about what the Z's say about our relationship.
And actually, I prefer it if people don't know
Right.
about my work. I much prefer it if I can just meet them as a human and we can have our connection. And then, and actually, I will tell you a story with Stephen, my ex-husband. The first night he came to see me do my thing to an audience of people in Sydney, Australia, it was very interesting. He said to me at the end of the night, he said, okay, because he'd just flown to Australia where I was on a tour. And he said, I'm going to take a shower because I have jet lag. And then I'm going to come back and you're going to explain to me what just happened in that room.
You didn't prep him?
Well, we'd been
You've
together
got to
3
see it,
months.
though. You've got to see it.
And also when I work in a workshop room, I'm working with people. It's
Yeah.
not just here's a channeled recording,
Yeah.
here's a book. I'm working with people, and
It's in real time.
It's in real time. So transformation is happening in action. And I literally, he went to the shower and I was like, oh God, he's going to dump me now. Like that was and he couldn't believe that was my narrative. But my narrative around that would be, I hope this isn't a problem for my relationship. And actually it wasn't. It was the opposite.
I have 2 sort of closing questions. One of them I think we could have covered way earlier. What do people come to you for? Like, what are people who are going to workshops or consulting or looking for help and advice? What's going on with them often?
Because I don't do one thing, it's many things. But I would say that the types of people who I tend to commonly get come to me are people who are already somewhat sensitive, empathic, or open, and they're looking to go deeper with it. People who love channeling, and that really works for them. People who are healers. People, I have a lot of people who are practitioners. For example, the energy update. I have loads of practitioner friends or people in the field who will often say to me, oh God, the energy update really helped me. I didn't know they were watching. So I think it depends. Some people come for a quick fix of, oh good, I just need to know how I feel. He sometimes works for me. I'll use the energy update. Okay, good. Other people go really deep and they want to come to all the workshops and they want to, take online courses. But I think ultimately people are looking for themselves, and you might be a person who can help them open some doorways in themselves.
Very helpful. And then I think there's a lot of people out there who are listening to different information on how to be more intuitive, how to regulate their emotions, how to maybe develop extrasensory abilities or hone, their senses, or maybe they're an empath that they feel overwhelmed. If someone is seeking, struggling, hasn't found the right footing, do you have a general advice that you would give them to, move towards a place where with more balance, more optimism, more sense of purpose in their life? What would you say to them?
The first thing I would say is know what you're seeking and why, and know your pain. Because often we will go and seek things to outrun our pain. And many of us did, I'm no different. I went to spirituality and self-growth because I had a big bag of pain that I knew was in my way. And I think sometimes people don't always tend to those two things separately, and actually it can be very healthy to go, okay, I know I'm seeking spirituality, but let me also look at my human story so far in life, and wow, it has been quite wounded. Let me look at those wounds. So I would say really know why you're looking into spirituality and what you're looking for, but also understand who you are that has brought you there, because that can just quicken the process. And then secondly, trust yourself, which can be a very hard thing to say. But there is a tendency, because we think we don't know anything about spirituality, we'll believe anybody. Or we'll believe the first person that tells us the fifth dimension should always be seen as blue and you access it by X, Y, and Z. I'm so not a fan of rules. Like, people will say, well, how do you become less anxious? It depends who the person is. It depends on their trauma history. It depends where they're at. It depends on their level. Sure, there are going to be some common areas around anxiety that will work for most people. But the problem with spirituality is we as humans have a tendency to want the answer. And the answer is linear, rigid, and it's in a box. As soon as you go into spirituality, you're in a multidimensional world. You are no longer in human land. So your human brain often has trouble breaking down those definitions and going, well, hang on. Well, this teacher said to get to the fifth dimension, I need to drink water only for a week. And then this person said to get to and who's right? And it's like, neither of them are correct. It's up to you to decide. You're going to get there yourself if the fifth dimension even matters to you. And some people really care about that stuff. So I think you have to go into it knowing this is going to be a big playing field. This might take me a lot of time, but if I know why I'm here, what I'm looking for, but equally, if I'm honest with myself about my basis, my basis is I've come out of 2 abusive relationships. I also need to look at that so that I'm taking care of that imbalance in myself and not letting that imbalance drive all my decisions over here in the spiritual field, which is why I'm self-growth and spirituality. I'm both. And for me, that's the balance point that works for me. So it's just a few things I would say.
I think it's super helpful. Thank you.
This was such a fascinating conversation, and really appreciate your explaining all the things that I wanted explained in particular, because I know it's not necessarily the framework that you have to operate in.
No, but I
really
get
great.
it, and thank you for your questions, and thank you for having me. It was very nice to meet you both.
Really,
and
really
be here.
awesome. Thank you so much. I don't really know what to say about our new friend Lee Harris, because I really expected. I didn't watch him. I read about him, and obviously Valerie prepares a fantastic document. But I kind of purposely didn't want to see him do his work or look up his videos. I just wanted to what's the information? Let's meet this guy. I had no idea. I didn't think it would be like this.
You thought he'd have more patchouli on.
I thought it would be very clear.
Metaphorical patchouli.
I thought it would be very clear that this guy's making this up. He's making it up. He's a smart person, so he knows beautiful and wise things about the universe. And in my defense, it's not like he's saying anything so shocking, we all need to put on purple hats and wear high heels. Then I'd be like, wow. But he's saying things that make sense, that are very in line with a lot of psychological, structure, a lot of mystical structure. So I just thought he's a guy who's making it up and he's having some delusional experience. I do not believe that anymore.
You don't believe he's having a delusional experience?
No, I don't think he's delusional.
What do you believe? What do you take away? Also, he told you that you are very spiritual. You don't like that. You always say you're not spiritual, you're not intuitive. He says otherwise.
Well, what I think is happening is that in the same way that certain people have an easier time dropping into a meditative space, or have learned the skills with which to do so, something opened for him from a place of pain. He describes that he had a spiritual awakening, right? It's what a 12-step program would call it, right? He had a spiritual awakening, and that awakening came with information that I cannot explain, that he's generating on his own. I think what I appreciate about Lee is that he doesn't have all the answers, meaning he can't necessarily explain what's happening or why or how. He's just experiencing something. And I do believe that he's allowed to make a living at what he does. And I also believe that his message is really one of love, openness, camaraderie, friendship, and connection. Those are all good things.
I agree. If you're watching this podcast right now, I am leaning over in my chair so that Archie doesn't eat the lever at the bottom of the chair that makes it go up and down.
He likes to chew on the levers of these chairs. I've noticed that.
It's a little bit distracting.
I really do like The Future Human because it is literally, I mean, as he said, it was an entire channeled book. So all of the answers are from the Z's. There's so many things here. I mean, we didn't even get to it because I was just so fascinated with his process and how he does this.
One thing I will say to people who are only listening, not watching, I watched his face and his head.
Something different happens.
And something was happening when he was
Yep.
kind of going into his reading of you, which was his face was getting redder, his head was getting hotter. You could kind of, he wasn't like full on sweating, but the skin coloration had changed. I'm curious if anyone watching noticed that. If you did, definitely comment. I think it's an interesting, he said he gets hotter. And so I was watching that happen.
So one of the things that is talked about in this book is he believes that there's something going on for a lot more people who are having access to this kind of information, who are interested in this kind of information. I think we can see it even just by our podcast and what people are interested in and kind of asking us to talk more about. And he said that this kind of, you could call it telepathic communication, you could call it, synchronicity. It says that this will become more and more normal. There are still some people who are surprised when they choose to reach out to a friend just as the friend is also calling them or sending a message at the exact same time. This is going to become more and more the norm. It's because the speed of your connection has not yet caught up with the awareness of your mind and intuition. You're all energetically connecting with each other in stronger ways. I just thought that was interesting. It's something we talk about in how we reconnected after many years of not speaking years ago. And yeah, he also talks a lot about sexual energy here, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
Well, Deepak talks in our episode about how we're at a precipice where humanity is changing, and sort of the not negative, but the skeptical side of this is that, everyone says that humanity's been changing and there's been all these periods of time and there was a change of consciousness in the 60s. And I don't necessarily know that changes or degrades the fact that it's happening now as well. But
Yeah.
It does seem like more people are aware of the skills and abilities that we all have and that our human experience can have a level of interconnection that we're beginning to realize on a deeper level.
If you'd like to hear more about Lee Harris, go to leeharrisenergy.com. I'm very, very curious to learn more about him. I mean, we learned so much today, but there's a lot more. Make sure to follow us on Substack. We've got some really special exclusive content from this episode that is over on Substack. Go to bialicbreakdown.substack.com. The Breaker community is eager to meet you over there. And from our breakdown to the one we hope you never have, we'll see you next time.
It's Maya Bialik's Breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, and now she's gonna break